see some people trickling in. We'll get started here in just a couple minutes. Okay, looks like the joins here are trickling off, so we'll go ahead and get started. Before we jump into the meat of the matter here, just a couple of housekeeping items. We will be recording this webinar. There will be copies made available after the fact, and definitely encourage you guys to share this with friends and colleagues who might be interested in the content. Obviously, we're doing this live right now, but it's good content to keep around and to use for the future. Also, we'll be doing a Q&A toward the end. Encourage you guys, as we're going through the content here, to please fill in your questions in the little question area there. Once we get toward the end here, we'll gather up all the questions and hopefully put answers to all these as we go. That being said, let's get started by introducing who you have on the call here. First off, myself, Todd Geib. I'm the Data Center Practice Manager at CoreTech Services. And then Harry Smith over at Zerto he is a technology evangelist there, and he will be helping out with the Zerto portion of this. So before we get into the Zerto content specific, I wanted to just take a moment. We thought it made sense to talk a little bit about who Coretek is, why we got together with Zerto for this webinar, and why we think it makes sense for us to partner together on not only Zerto projects, but other projects going forward. So first, a little bit about Coretek. We were founded in 2005, so been around a little over 10 years now. Based out of Farmington Hills, Michigan. Actually, I'll take a moment just to mention, we just moved into an awesome new headquarters in Farmington Hills, and we are having an open house on June 8th. We'll be sending out invites to all the folks on the call. You're all welcome to come on down for those who are local. Obviously, check out our new building, say hi to the people in person, and get to know people. So Coretek, we're about 120 employees overall. What's unique about us, 85% of that is delivery oriented. So very big on low overhead, and very big also as well as on having a strong and deep and wide delivery team. So one of the things you're going to hear me say over and over in this presentation, you probably hear consultants when you get involved with projects with us say, as well as is our mission statement, which is project success, no exceptions. I've personally been at CoreTech almost 4 years now, and worn a lot of different hats from all over the company. And I can honestly say this is something that all the consultants eat, sleep, and live by for sure. So take a moment just to toot our own horn a little bit with some awards that we've won. We have won the 101 Best and Brightest Companies to Work For nationally for the last 5 years, and here in Metro Detroit for the last 8 years in a row. That can't happen without happy folks working, so we're very proud of that. Also, Citrix and AppSense Central Partner of the Year recently, as well as Nutanix Healthcare Partner of the Year. Some key distinguishers for us: we're a Microsoft Global Managed Services Partner. There aren't too many of those in the world, so happy to share with you that that's one of the things we do. We also, from a partnership standpoint, have the highest levels of partnership with, as you can see, Imprivata, Citrix, VMware, AppSense, and Nutanix, just to name a few. So when CoreTech comes in to work on a project with you guys, we thought it made sense to explain to you kind of the areas that we have the ability to cover. These areas are broken down as you can see them on the screen here. We have a virtualization practice, which is all of your server and desktop virtualization, as well as the end user optimization, that sort of stuff. A data center practice, obviously near and dear to my heart. This is our vendor agnostic approach to the technologies within a data center. So this is all your storage, your networking, your compute, all the hypervisor type stuff is there as well. We also have a managed services organization, which is something that we'll do after we finish a project. We'll come back in to offer managed services and offer the kind of SLAs and ongoing support that you would typically be needing after the successful completion of a project. We also have a cloud solutions practice. This is something relatively new for us, but certainly very hot for us right now. We are an Azure cloud services provider, and I believe one of the top, it's top 2 now in the nation as far as Azure CSPs go. We also have a strong Microsoft practice. This is where you get kind of all the big name Microsoft products. This is where your Office 365s come in, Active Directory, SharePoint, all that sort of stuff. So what makes CoreTech different from other consulting organizations you might have seen out there? Obviously, as I mentioned earlier on, our motto, project success, no exception. This is the center of everything that we do. We are consultants first. So we come in with a consultative approach, trying to solve problems with solutions and that sort of thing. We are more about a solution-oriented approach. So we don't necessarily focus in on any one specific technology. Rather, we're taking a step back and looking at it from a solutionary style approach. We are technology agnostic. So while we are looking at these solutions, we're not necessarily coming into you with a trench coat full of product where we say, these are the ones you can pick from, let us know which one you want, and then we'll move on from there. It's much more what technology is appropriate to the solution itself. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our partners. Obviously, we are here with Zerto for a reason. The way that we do partnerships is we, of course, choose what we consider to be best in breed. No surprise then that we have Zerto on here. But in addition to that, one of the things I find unique about CoreTech that we do is when we decide that we're going to partner with a company, it isn't just sign a business agreement and kind of move on from there. What we actually do is we bring in the products, we put them in front of the folks who will be delivering on those products. We have them beat on it for a while. Once they're happy with it, then we have the go-ahead to move on with the rest of the partnership. If it turns out that it fails at that point, either we have some back and forth with the partner to help them improve upon that stuff, or it's just a dead stop right there. As a result, we have extremely strong partnerships. Something I think truly unique about Coretek is what you see here. Something that I think that most, if not all, other consulting organizations cannot say. We can truly say across the board, every project that we have started on with a pilot, we have gone into production. Never once have we had to dial anything back and undo what we were doing. 100% pilot to production every time. Something else that's a key differentiator for us as well. We have actually taken the time to develop some of our own intellectual property in the form of software. We noticed some niches out there that we were seeing that weren't being filled by others, and so we sat down with the development team and decided to jump right into developing ourselves. And we're delivering on that every day as we go through projects. So that being said, that's a little bit about Coretek for you. I'm going to go ahead and hand this over to Harry to take advantage of the Zerto stuff. Let me find you here, Harry.
Sure. Thank you so much, Todd. And I'll talk through all of this. And as I go through, absolutely feel free to jump in, interject, and add some flavor to anything you see on my slides as well. But as mentioned, definitely keep the questions coming as well. So.
Yeah, we'll do. I am seeing some of those pop in already, so we should be busy at the end.
Perfect. All right. So yeah, I'm Harry Smith. I'm from Zerto. I've been here a little over 14 months now. I'm a technology evangelist, so in tech marketing group under product marketing as well. And before that, I was a little over 8 years at VMware doing data center professional services, so consulting and cloud architecture and some integrated suite tech marketing as well, and IT world before that. So this is some of the agenda we'll go through today. Talk about ransomware, and again, know your enemy, the risk vector, what's happening in the world today, and what best practices can you take to secure and protect your environment against ransomware threats, and current data protection and recovery solutions. How do you mitigate that risk or recover once that's impacted your environment and your data? I'll give you a brief introduction to Zerto and then talk about a few of the essential key components of the solution and what it does for you. Because yes, it is a critical solution to help you in this case, and to Todd's point, it's still just a piece of the solution of your total solution, what you need in your enterprise to protect yourself, and what CoreTech Services can offer you as well. Zerto is part of that puzzle, and a solution in its own right that has its own pieces and reaches everywhere, but you can couple that with all these other options and availability around different services and technologies that protect you all around and move your business to the future. So we'll look at recovering from the infection in minutes and how that all works, and then hear about a real-world customer story that it becomes quite common, actually, that you'll hear as we move forward. So definitely let me know if you have any trouble seeing slides. I think we're all worked out, but we'll take a look at ransomware, a brief look at 2016, because basically whenever I start these, I often get the question of, is this even really still a threat? I was showing some 2015 data, and it was early on 2015, and the numbers were pretty large, but hey, are they going up or are they going down? Well, here's some numbers to compare. 209 million, this is reported, of course. When people say they want to pay, they're not getting reports from ransomware developers and thieves doing surveys. They're actually tracking who's paying these and who actually admits that they're paying these. But 209 million, it's a huge business, first quarter 2016. Whole bunch of different varieties, and some of these don't exist. CryptoLocker has been beaten, and some of these other ones, I can't remember if Locky has or not, but all the companies out there are trying to combat these and give you solutions, so hopefully you can get unlockable codes before it happens or when it happens. But this number right here, if you look at the number of attacks, 3.8 million attacks in 2015 was huge. It was a big number of reported attacks, but that's gone up to 638 million in 2016. So that's not just a little bit of an increase. This is a huge business, and the more you pay a ransom, the more likely you are not only for an attack, but for more people to want to get in on this business and make some money and make more varieties of this. So huge number, more than 1.7 million attacks per day. But it was detected first in May 2013. Various types of similar viruses and infections from, even further back than that, but over 32,000 varieties today. So it's huge, and many, many people are trying to get their claim at this money. Now, here's an alarming percentage that I had to put up there, in that I think I read that 70% of businesses impacted actually want to pay it, but only 1 in 5 can actually recover their data after paying. So that's huge. That's why we're doing this today, to protect you and help you recover when this happens to you. Because you might pay it and say, hey, my data is valuable, but there's a 4 to 5 chance that you don't even get unlocked. So it's big in the news. You're seeing it everywhere. People are stockpiling money. I heard about it at healthcare conferences, where this is bigger than some of the other agendas that they're into with IT and high availability, is protection against ransomware and keeping cash aside, because they know what's going to happen. And as soon as they pay it once, they're usually getting targeted for more attacks. But it's some very nasty chains. There was one just last week again that was all over the news, and they're becoming more and more publicized. Websites being taken down and data being corrupted, and I think it's less and less likely, again, that you're going to actually be able to pay and unlock. But it is a global problem. This is all the increases in 2016 over 2015, calculated all the data and the numbers, and we're seeing it pop up in more and more populations and regions throughout the world, where maybe some of these pieces of the countries were excluded before. They're actually targets. Everybody has a target. And those numbers are actually huge. The 20% in the U.S. is quite a huge number, from the 750,000 attacks in 2015 way up to where it is now. So enormous attacks. Let me just try to pull in a little bit more data there, see if you can see it. Okay. So how does it happen? This screen on the left here looks something like what you might see as a pop-up. And a big problem here is we see pop-ups and we dismiss them or close them, and sometimes we click them and say, oh, okay, unlock, and that might infect you right when you click those buttons. But anyway, you'll see something like this, and it says you have to pay. There's a deadline. Sometimes that deadline's an hour, sometimes it's a few days or a week, but you have to do something with that. You'll receive spam or malware or a link from somebody that says open this, and it does get into your system, and it's going to encrypt anything you have that it can find. Sometimes it's targeted, sometimes it's not, towards certain files. Sometimes it just wants to get everything it can find. And then you get this notice and says, you pay this ransom, we'll unlock your data, and we're good to go. Well, you're required to pay in Bitcoins. There were some variants, maybe last year that I saw. I don't know if it's still doing that, but they were asking for iTunes gift cards, for example, because even if they collect $25 or $100 gift cards, they're still untraceable, and they're quick wins for them to get their money without being traced. So it's harder and harder, again, to track these businesses down, making it more likely that companies want to get in on this. Our advice to you, of course, is don't pay. If the second you pay, you're enabling them to do it more, and you're enabling yourself to be a bigger, greater target that wants to pay. So a few reasons why we don't want to pay, and we'll get into that. Here's a little more detail on how it works with the encryption keys and passing it back and forth, but the victim's compromised, and they download this virus, this CryptoLocker or ransomware, or whatever the variant is. It executes on your system, and it gets injected into your computer. So your computer's running this in the system. It's very, very difficult to detect, and it makes itself persistent copies. So even when you delete these out of the registry, just like strains that were happening in the, I think, early 2000s, that you can delete them and they were hidden and they would recreate themselves. So they're very, very dangerous and extremely hard to track down and stop because they're randomized in some ways. But they're injecting their main malware logic into your system, and it's downloading their public encryption key from their server. So they'll get this key and they'll encrypt all of your files and lock them all out so you don't have access to them. And you need that key that's been encrypting on your data, and you need the decryption version of that key as well. So you'll get your ransom in 3 different formats. You'll usually get a picture. You might get a website generated. You might get text files up on your system to show you that you've been infected, so multiple chances to actually notice that it's happened to you, so you can take action on it, hopefully. They want to make sure they're marketing correctly. And can it be broken? They do use extremely strong crypto, and they're not perfect, but hopefully you can intercept it with a strong firewall and monitoring this type of traffic. And as these variants become modified, you might be able to use firewall tactics to detect the algorithms and the types of malware that's coming in, so you can block it out completely and intrusion detection systems. But you might be able to stop the spread from going through, or if your networks are going through this firewall, hopefully you can have them block. But oftentimes you cannot download the key, but the security companies and government agencies are trying to create their own keys and decryption keys as well that you could download and integrate into your antivirus systems to hopefully break the keys. But it is slow, and it's a battle that's very, very hard to win. But the bottom line is, as you see on the bottom left here, have a good recovery strategy, because it's going to happen. You have to figure out what it's going to attack, but be able to recover that data. Because the biggest problem and the biggest temptation to pay a ransom is when you're afraid of your data loss, right? So we'll get into that as we go forward, but have a good recovery strategy and not worry about data loss, and then you don't need to be tempted to pay. So let's take a quick look at stopping infections. What does this mean when we think about web, email, USB devices, or drives, or bring your own device mentalities that corporations are adopting? Who does it impact? Users, IT department, external. We all do play a part in this environment. Even IT, even though IT is very scrutinized, we still have to take accountability in these areas and make sure everybody's always on their toes. And we have to look out for what can happen to your disks and what can happen to your networks. So recommendations for the first column on the left: secure your entry points, just like we talked about on the last slide, your firewall and intrusion detection systems. Filtering web traffic and scanning attachments on emails, because those are hard to block out completely. Part of this is, you might not ever be able to completely stop it from entering your environment. Some of it's political. We need certain things open. Some of it's just logistics. You need environments to work certain ways, so they have to have entry points that are opened up in certain ways. But we can get better about closing those down or locking them down. But hopefully we make policies like blocking USB devices. That is a very hard one to implement globally, but I've been in companies where I've plugged in a USB drive to use it, and it did say immediately, if I want to use this, I must hit go to encrypt it with their software, the company software, so I can use it on their site, and then when I leave, it doesn't work anymore. So that's perfectly fine if you block them or have some security measures around keeping those isolated or keeping them protected. And the same with bring your own devices. So company mandates often say, hey, bring your own laptop or iPad or phone, get onto our desk network on the Wi-Fi. Don't display your private internal Wi-Fi password all over your company and write it all over the walls so people can just come in off the street and start connecting into your Wi-Fi. And you don't want devices to be open on everything, because you're not controlling that entire device. You don't know what could be on it before they connect. So it's extremely dangerous. Even when you're thinking about the applications on the device and what access those applications have, there are virtualized versions of those apps on your phone where you can have multiple profiles or different applications that only work when you log in to that app, and then when you log out, it has no access to the rest of your device. So your phone, if it's corrupted, it won't be able to get into that app. So you can control that many different ways. And I'm going to take a step back real quick to the USB devices, because there was a story of ransomware early last year. And if you think it's just USB drives, think about charging things. And one of the stories was from e-cigarettes. Someone plugged in one to charge it on their laptop, and it happened to have ransomware on it because it was a USB module in there, and an e-cigarette that needed to charge actually impacted their entire corporation. So extremely dangerous, and sad to say that that's the problem that caused your downtime. And then virtual machines. As you build these virtual machines out, remove access to the internet for those, and only require access for certain machines. Make sure they go through proxy servers, all those best practices that IT has to take. If you feel obstructed and blocked, it's for a reason, and it's frustrating sometimes, but to know the greater good actually helps the message, and just learn the best, most efficient way to get your work done and not be blocked from doing your job, but know that you're trying to protect from a much greater threat as you have to go around some of these workarounds. Recommendations for the users. We want to definitely train users in IT. And I put IT in that mold, not to call out that they're doing something wrong, but it's so easy to deviate from standards and best practices once you get your job. You want to get your job done quickly and efficiently, So you make little holes or take little shortcuts like logging in as admin or domain admin to do all your work. Well, as soon as you do that, you're more vulnerable. You have more access to more things. So if you do become infected, that's going to use your access to get around. And same with users. Train them to know what those pop-ups look like. If you have examples, or you can send out regular emails or webinars or something internal to say, reminder, don't click these. Let us know if the second you see one. Disconnect from the network if you see one. All kinds of things you can do to train them ahead of time and keep these infections out. What does the email look like? What do the attachments look like? All those different things. Of course, keep everything up to date, antivirus and malware, not just antivirus software, but also malware and spyware software to remove that. Restricting your domain admin's use, once again. Having change control on everything. So if a virtual machine gets web access, for example, that should be notified that it was done. So not so someone's accountable, but so action can be taken to find out where that happened, how it got in. If it changed, when's the timer that it has to be changed back? This access only allowed for so long. Or you've let external users in, contractors to do some work for you, consultants. When do you disable their access? How do you know who has access to what? Software restriction policies extend that one step further to say you're only allowed to install certain software on your laptop. Again, it gets frustrating. I'm frustrated sometimes at work because I used to be a full admin with access to everything in the domain, and now sometimes I can't even install an application I need to do my job. But you have to bring that to IT, have them evaluate the application, and maybe it doesn't mean you can't. It just means you can with some justification and some safety around it, safety measures. So when it comes to stopping your infections on your disks and your networks, audit your file shares, look for things that change, especially if there's a rapid amount of change or IL in your storage. You can see these things happening sometimes, and permission structures changing really rapidly. That's part of your intrusion detection systems, looking at this behavior happening. Apply read-only. That's another area that's near and dear to my heart because we did that internally in our department. Is everybody got read-only access to our shared drive, which was extremely frustrating. But we had to email everything through what I was seeing as a bottleneck. So you have to figure out how not to make those bottlenecks, but with full access only going through a couple of users, or users with a run as this user to access the file share, put the files in there, and then close that connection. So it's only open briefly with full permissions. Basically what that means is if you become infected and you have your user drive and your S drive, your shared drive with the whole company, that ransomware is going to try to find those drives that have full access, that you have full access to, and it's going to try to impact every single file that's out there. So if you have access to it, it's going to be targeted. So block those off and only use read-only or full access when you need it. Use honey trapping and alerting, that bottom bullet there, to say, hey, we have a fake drive that's actually full permissions that looks really attractive to ransomware, but we'll monitor that. So if something starts attacking it, we know ransomware's in, we can alert on it and isolate that incident, but at least know how it got in or where it's going when it gets in. And using different user VLANs, that bullet point's there just to let you know that a lot of corporations implement that for different organizations or user groups or even between floors of your company. So if some device gets impacted, you could at least disable that VLAN and quarantine off a smaller subset of users instead of cutting your network for the entire company. But using VLANs to help you monitor traffic that way and isolate traffic. So that's how we stop infections. But of course, it can still happen. When we talk about the day zero exploits and what do, we learned about protection. Now let's talk about response and restoration of that data. So data protection, secure your infrastructure, perform tests, have isolated test networks. So whenever you want to test your data or test virtual machines or find out when ransomware even came in, you can hopefully spin up copies of those in an isolated test network so it doesn't get back out. But the most important thing on this list is payment is never advised. Again, if you have very little chance of even getting a real key, it's not worth even paying. You're only tempted because your solution didn't give you minimal data loss. And when I talk about that key and why are 1 in 4 getting a real valid key, it's because there are a lot of copycat. You talk about those 32,000 plus variants of ransomware. A lot of companies are copycat and they're taking this code and using it to make these keys and encrypt your data, but they're not necessarily getting the code to unlock it. So they might not be able to provide you with a key to actually unlock your data. They just can copy this stuff and send it to you and just have the pointer point to them to send money. But they have no idea how to get these keys or how to make a key for you. So there's very little chance you'll even get a working key. So what do you do once it happens? We talked about the isolation, but also infection response. How do you communicate to your users before it happens so they're educated, but once it happens, hey, let's notify everybody through email. Maybe it's phone call system. Maybe it's something where if they're isolated because you cut their VLAN off, they need to know how to continue forward, how to do their job, where they can get work done, and what do they need to do with their systems to make sure they're clean, help control that spread, and keep effective communication. You don't want anybody panicking or trying to mitigate the system by moving their laptop and plugging it in somewhere else to try to get network if you think they're infected. So you have to have proper instructions and rule sets to keep them isolated and control that spread. It's extremely important. They feel that they're in the loop and they know exactly what they need to do and what that impact is if they don't follow your rules. And then in order to restore, you definitely want to check for decryption tools. So like I said, there are a lot of the major antivirus and spyware malware companies that are creating these fixes or keys to remove this, not necessarily decrypt, but remove the ransomware from your system so it can unlock your files. And also the government agencies are working with them to try to crack these and beat them. But be able to hopefully check for that real quick and see if there's one available. But you want to test your data. You want to look at your timestamps from when this infection came in. Now you can do this manually, or you can use monitoring and monitoring tools that can monitor your all your data, all your timestamps, and look for those patterns that are showing many, many things locked. Or go back and look at the files manually and say, oh, this is when it was modified, and it shows the date stamp of last modified. But you should be able to test that data. Get a copy of it, download it, or maybe boot up, again, copies of those virtual machines in an isolated network and see when that file is modified there in a safe environment. And then restore that data from just before that happened so you don't have very much loss, and then perform the root cause analysis. How did it get in? How do I stop it from happening again? The customer story we have at the end of the webinar today does talk about a customer that's been impacted multiple times, and you think that's crazy. They should perform root cause analysis and fix this, but you know what, like we said on the last slide, there are still things you need to accomplish. There's still politics involved that say certain things need to be open, or we need access to things to do our job. So there are still vulnerabilities. You have to figure out how to respond faster, how to recover better, how to have more quality in all of your steps. So this root cause analysis is extremely important to be able to fix some of the holes that it got in the last time and learn our process and operation, so we're not down longer just trying to figure it all out. We're only down for the time it takes to recover. So we'll compare typical data solutions, and what you're seeing here is if ransomware happened at this timestamp right before 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, no matter what it was, we're talking about the icon in the middle, cryptolocker virus infection or ransomware infection. If you're going to last night's backup, that's great, but it could be up to 24 hours back. Hopefully you at least have last night's backup, so you have a copy every single day of your data. But you have to now figure out if that time from when your backup happened and when ransomware struck is too great. Am I losing too much data before that happened that it's actually worth trying to pay the ransom? Maybe the ransom's only $20,000 and I'm going to lose $1 million worth of work today. So I don't want to go back to last night. So I'll try to pay it first and then I'll go back. Again, you don't want to pay ransomware. You want to look at your solutions and your time to recovery and how easy it is for you. So maybe you look at more technologies, look at snapshotting technologies, whether that's array-based, snapshotting your storage and making copies, or snapshotting your virtual machines and making copies. You can do that every hour, every 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever works in your environment and for your solutions and storage space. But at least that reduces your impact, that loss threat. So if you only have to go back 4 hours or 2 hours to where that data happens, hopefully that reduces your urge to push that button to pay for that ransom. Because the longer you're falling back in time here, the more data loss and downtime you have to rebuild and recover all of your data and make sure it's all working again. So we want to minimize the impact. We want to be able to recover and rewind, hopefully from just seconds before that ransomware happened, before that infection came in. So we'll talk about the solution and how you can look back in time 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 seconds before that's happened to your company. And that right there should give you plenty of faith that you don't need to pay a ransom. If you know you're only impacted from a couple of seconds, it's not worth paying $20,000 if you really have pretty much no data loss. Maybe a couple of words in a Word document that didn't save, but not an entire day's work of work for your whole corporation and sales and everything that came in throughout the day, everything you're going to lose. So looking at this type of solution, on the top left there, thousands of recovery points over the last 30 days, you can use those recovery points on any of your virtual machines to recover from ransomware on your files or entire VMs that became corrupted, or an application stack of many VMs together, or your entire site. That's a different conversation outside of ransomware because it hopefully doesn't impact your entire site. But that's where Zerto comes in, and the Zerto revolution. So what Zerto is looking at, the picture on the top right shows a hypervisor. We know about server virtualization, abstracting that compute layer, storage virtualization, and network virtualization, security virtualization, all kinds of things, and you've probably heard about hypervisor-based replication. But that's really what the founders were thinking about way back in the day before this whole cloud stuff was out there and all these hypervisor-based solutions were there. But replication was in the wrong layer. In the physical layer, it only enables you to go back in time a certain amount of times. It's locked into storage. It's getting us away from that software-defined data center mentality, where the more we can abstract ourselves away from that physical hardware and not rely on it, the more flexibility we have in our corporation. The easier it is to be agile, mobile. Zerto Virtual Replication was the first and only at the time enterprise-class replication solution in the hypervisor. But the key point here that we really love our replication and how it all works and how easy it is to recover. But a key piece that we often don't talk about as much is the replication and recovery automation as part of the solution. So you can automatically click a few buttons to recover your files or fail over virtual machines or sites and enable failback. And all these things are built in to take away your recovery time objectives and that time to recover your data. Good, we see some questions going in. So we'll address some of those in a little while in a couple more slides, but this is just some of the Zerto theme here. Resilience for evolving IT just means having a solution that enables you to do these things, enables you for change. You're not locked in. Once we abstract that layer from the virtualization, from the physical layer to the virtualization layer, you can choose between your hypervisors and your storage and really take advantage of opening up your possibilities. When Coretek has their whole book of everything that is available to you, you don't have to be locked in based on what you have already. Yes, they can match what you have and help you through that process and the solutions, but you're also opened up to more options, and they can help guide you down the right path that works better for you. So that's what it's really all about, is getting out of your way so you can continue on with your business. So protect, reduce that impact, and remove risk. There are built-in functionalities within the ZVR, Zerto Virtual Replication product, that allow you to do isolated tests for the virtual machines or do file level recovery. And once those tests are run, DR tests, you get reports automatically generated to show you how long that test took, proving your RPO, proving your RTOs, make sure those numbers are really small and your threats minimized. And you can do all kinds of types of reports, like how many VMs do I have that are protected, that aren't protected, how much data loss am I looking at if I get impacted, being able to recover faster. So RTOs are really, really quick. We're recovering from seconds before, and then recovering very, very quickly just by booting virtual machines or grabbing files out of those repositories or journals. So it makes it really, really easy to evolve your business when you're moving forward and looking at anything in the future, looking at any one of over 350 Zerto-backed cloud service providers or public cloud entities out there. There are plenty of possibilities and solutions for you to look at for different types of things that will impact your business. And that doesn't mean even just looking at what your business will do today or tomorrow, but when you think about mergers and acquisitions and you taking on new companies and businesses through that process, they might have something different than what you have. They might have a different strategy. Well, how do you incorporate them into your enterprise if they're very, very different? Well, with the solution, you can take that word your way. This is how it actually works. I'm not going to spend too much time because I want to save some time at the end for Q&A and for Todd. But this is a brief introduction into the high-level technology. We have a production site and a BCDR site over there, a couple of hypervisors at the bottom with some VMs running on them on both sites, and then we have Virtual Center here from VMware. You could be in Hyper-V there, but you install the Zerto Virtual Manager, which is just your management interface and the database to look at what's going on in your environments. From there, you deploy Zerto Virtual Replication Appliances, one of those per hypervisor host. So those are the engines that hook into the hypervisor and watch that I/O stream of all the data going through. On the block level, they can do compression, they can throttle bandwidth at peak times during the day if you want. They're resilient to outages, they can watch replication even during upgrades. But as these block changes happen, continuously replicate each and every single block to the other side. Once those blocks are on the other side and they're validated that they came in the right order, so maintaining right order fidelity, they get marked in the database to say this is a valid checkpoint that we can recover from. So you don't have any overhead on those protected VMs on the left side because we're not putting agents or snapshots on them. We're just replicating blocks. And then we have a little bit of storage on the other side on top of your replica, but for those journals. So if you want to save 30 days of journal and you're changing a lot of I/O, those journals will grow a little bit bigger than the 7 to 10%. But on average, our corporations and enterprises using this see about 7 to 10% overhead on the destination side. And then look at DR as a service and what does that mean for you. So all that means is instead of maintaining your own physical sites and having these unprotectable costs and all the management infrastructure and operations around that and locked into leases, what happens when you look at cloud sites and the flexibility that that enables for you. You only need to pay for what you need. You have the flexibility to DR to the cloud, and maybe later you want to migrate to the cloud and protect with DR again once you're there. But it makes it really, really easy to take this solution and replicate to multiple locations, to compare sites or compare on-prem versus cloud and see what the difference is for your organization. There's no right answer for you. As far as I'm concerned, the right answer is what you work out with your partner to say, these are your options, and this is what that means for your business and your operations and your personnel and where they can help. So compare those cost models, and you no longer need to be afraid of that when you have a solution like this backing you to migrate into the cloud and do isolated tests to see what happens if I'm in the cloud and I get ransomware, and how do I get my data back and how long does it take. This is just showing, I don't want to spend too much time on this for the ransomware conversation, but showing that we can actually group virtual machines in what we call a virtual protection group. So if we have an application that's 5 or 6 or 7 or 20 machines, we can group those together. All that's doing for us is giving us a single point in time recovery that's consistent down to the second. So when you recover that protection group, all of those VMs from that application recover from the same exact point in time. And you pre-configure all the settings, the boot ordering of those VMs and boot delays and post pre-recovery scripts or changing IPs. Anything that you need, you can set ahead of time and not worry about it ever again. The solution just says, protect your VMs. I don't care about the rest. I don't care what hypervisor I'm on or moving to. I don't care what storage is underneath it. Just protect my VMs and protect them together so I can recover them. Same with that data. The data across all those VMs, if you want to recover your files that were encrypted, you can recover them all from the same exact second across the board because they all have the same checkpoints. So when you want to recover from ransomware in minutes, all you need to do is click on the Actions button. This is the Zerto interface here, showing how protected I am and my sites are connected and how many VMs I'm protecting. What you will notice before I dig into that is on the left, you'll see some charts and graphs, IOPS and throughput. And on the top right, you see some compression and RPO figures, that 7 and that 88. 7-second RPO is the average across this entire site or the sites that are connected here. If that started to climb really rapidly, I could probably look at the graph on the left and see IOs climbing rapidly as well, or network throughput. You know stuff's happening to your storage. That's where you can compare and start to say something is going on. Let's lock something down. It might be ransomware. But when it strikes, when you're impacted, again, no fear. Don't pay the ransom. Click the Actions button. Well, this is the live failover. If you want to do a live failover or a test failover, you click the bottom right failover button. And this screen right here pops up, whether you're recovering a file or recovering a whole VM or a site. And all it lets you do is go through those protection groups and look at your VMs, and then click on that little section in the center that says checkpoint, and you can go back in time to a checkpoint that's only a few seconds before ransomware happened. So when you can isolate when that happened to your company, you can look at that. So and then click the Start Failover button or click the Download Files button if that's the menu you're in. But there are a few different ways to go through that. And this shows some of the restore functionality for an actual file. It mounts the disks. Once you say, select this VM and then select which drive I want to actually look at my files, I can mount that disk and browse it right through here, right through the browser, and pick all the different files or folders that were impacted or databases or anything I need to do to grab if I don't want to recover the whole VM, and then have instant download right through the browser in a zip file. So it's extremely easy. It's integrated in the hypervisor. I'm not going to show you all of this because you can see this all in a demo later on. So it's a really easy user interface and installs very, very quickly. This is a sample of the report you get at the end of a test showing your RPOs and RTOs, or, well, it shows RTO. Your RPOs are on the interface there, always up to date, but it does follow a lot of different regulatory compliance standards. So whatever you need to be compliant in, we can look up everything that this covers as well. So it meets a lot of different areas. I'll jump quickly into a customer story, and then we can jump into some Q&A, I think, after a couple more closing slides. But this is a real story. Customer sent us this picture from a cell phone of a computer screen. They had this, and their users actually just minimized this and kept working. They said, oh, this must be one of those pop-ups. Let me just minimize it. Thankfully, they didn't just click next, because sometimes that happens and causes more problems, right? But what the response was isolating the PC from the network. They called their partner, and the partner, like a Coretek, says, nope, do not pay a ransom. You have Zerto. Let's walk through this. You don't need to recreate your files or accept any data loss. We can go back to seconds before it happened. Don't pay a ransom. Yes, they were hit multiple times that year. 2, I think, and maybe 4 by now since then. But basically what they've done and improved in their process is what we talked about earlier, is minimizing that recovery time and that worry of how much it's impacting in their business. They had to manually go figure out which files were impacted and find out that this happened because the user never even notified them anyway. They minimized the screen and never called IT because they weren't educated in what that pop-up was. So they've learned those processes. They put in monitoring procedures and honeypot traps and all these different areas to say when it happened the next time, they're actually able to put all those files back within 15 minutes of the infection coming into their environment. And the user never even knew that they had any files impacted. They were able to continue working, and nobody had to call IT. So you can make a whole bunch of changes that make your business a lot more flexible. So with that, I'm going to pass it back over to you, Todd, if I can.
Thank you, Harry. I think what we'll do before we get into questions, I actually had a couple of thoughts I was going to share, just both from the standpoint of what my own personal experience and our experience with customers, but also just items that I've had customers ask about in the past that I think are key. So one of the things that I think is just in general understated with Zerto as a whole is, and I harp on this from a data center standpoint, because we've gotten into this mode in the data center world of adding complication to everything that we do as a means of job security. And so the thing that's understated from a Zerto standpoint is what I'll call ease of use. If it wasn't obvious to you guys in the slides that Harry was showing, it certainly would be in a demo, which we'll talk about shortly here. But everything that you even from an admin standpoint that you access is all a web-based interface, 100% HTML5. There's no need for any additional plugins, or you don't have to go and install Java or anything like that. So certainly from a UI standpoint, there's the ease of use factor there, but there is also this almost intangible thing that I've actually got. This is the feedback I've gotten from customers who are talking to me about the product, and that's there are, anytime you're talking about DR and replication, there are a lot of tough questions to answer that with most other products out there, if not all, are just impossible, difficult if not impossible to answer. So, and yet they're simple things. So like, I mean, you showed it in one of your slides, Harry. What is my current RPO? right, just that simple question, most other products out there don't have even the ability to do. It's up to you to either calculate it on your own or to run through a test and assume that that test is going to be like production. And one of the things I think Zerto's awesome at is showing you the answers to those tough questions right front and center on the dashboard. And it really shows, to me, after working with Zerto for a while, it really shows that they get the DR, concept, obviously at a high level, but they get that, a lot of times this is all, kind of voodoo. It doesn't really, you do a bunch of backups and replication and all that, but you don't really know until something happens. Well, the fact that they get it is shown in the fact that they show you the answers to those questions, and they're not just cosmetic. Those are true answers to what you're doing. The other thing I'll mention, you touched on briefly there, from a reporting standpoint. One of the things I know our customers have raved about in the past is the reporting. So there's the obvious peace of mind that you get out of the reporting. I mean, when you take a look at a report, it shows that the product itself, is confident in what it's doing, and will give you kind of data to make you understand that what it's doing is real, if you will. But and this is really the key feedback I get from customers, is these reports are awesome for management, to be able to show management that here is the predictable DR that they have in place there is no equal to that. To be able to confidently say, here's what you have in place and here's what you can expect out of it, it's very difficult to get out of any other product. So just two key pieces there. So what I think we'll do now, Harry, unless you have anything else, we'll jump over into Q&A. We did have a couple questions come in here.
Yeah, go ahead.
What I'll do is just run through them, and I think between you and I, we can get these things answered. First, a reminder, and this is actually in response to one of the questions, this is being recorded, so we'll have a copy of the entire presentation in a video format after the fact that you can share with others. If you do want the slides like you're requesting, we'll get with you specifically later and be happy to share those without issue. So that said, into some more meaty questions here. And so I'll kind of add some color around this. You talk about replication and the concept of moving from one place to another. Zerto is obviously not a virus protection product in and of itself. So if you get ransomware, it's going to replicate it just like any other data. And so the question here is, what if I do get ransomware? Isn't that just going to get replicated? And then if it is, how do I recover from that?
Oh yeah, I'll take that if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's a common theme, and especially if you talk about industries like healthcare and financials, where they have extreme needs of high availability and they do synchronous replication. Well, they're also replicating that. The key here with this journal that goes back up to 30 days, and we've seen people standardize on one-day journal, but they say, you know what, I need a 3-day journal. What if I get ransomware over the weekend and I don't want to, make sure I have some capture there? But you can go back up to 30 days, and there's thousands of these recovery points. Even, you might have 500 of them in the last hour from every couple of seconds. So yes, you'll replicate that infection, but you can go back and look again when that happened and recover from one of those checkpoints a couple of seconds before that happened. So it's different than any other type of technology in the way that that journal and the hypervisor really just watches every single block changing and can capture those changes and just make a little check mark to say, we know that data came to the other side correctly. It's known good as far as how it came in and got written to disk, so you can recover from that. So it gives you a lot of flexibility there to go back right before that happened.
And I'll add in, and this will address one of the other questions about snapshots, that one of the key differentiators that I see with Zerto as compared to others, that most of the other products are snapshot based. And so there's a key technology difference there between this journal-based concept and a snapshot-based concept. With the snapshots, it's a scheduled thing that happens every so often. But with the Zerto journal, it's more of a stream concept and pointers within that stream. So, and so just to say it out loud, the other question that was asked here is, can I just take snapshots every 15 minutes from my entire environment? Here, I'm sure you can add some color, but I mean, of course, snapshots are always an option. I'll just say this from a high-level solution standpoint. You can always snapshot everything. It isn't that methodology won't work. It's more the inconveniences and the specifics to that. Harry, can you add some other specifics on to talking about snapshots versus kernel?
And they definitely have their place as part of your total solution, as maybe protecting certain workloads and certain times of day. But as you scale and grow and get more data flowing through and more rate of change, snapshots become more impactful, especially to production VMs. So you try to take those every 5 minutes on every virtual machine all the time at scale, and you're going to start seeing performance problems in your whole environment on storage. You might see blue screens on servers. So they have their place, but they might be limited in scale and frequency. So definitely plan that out. If you do need them or want them for certain aspects, that's perfectly fine, but don't rely on them solely to recover. Some of them, might be such heavy hitters. The important VMs are the ones that you can't even snapshot during the day, so they're at more risk of losing data anyway if you can only snapshot them once every night, just like your backups. They're easier to recover from than a backup, and a lot more flexible of moving a VM around from using snapshots, but you still have data loss depending on when you can take them. And schedule them between multiple VMs. If your application is impacted across a bunch of VMs, it's very difficult to manage that.
Yeah, agreed. That's an important point too. To my earlier point about complexity, having to match up all those snapshots with workloads is having been through that on my own in the past, not a fun task. And especially with the protection groups that Zerto does, having them all grouped together and not having to worry about that as well is not only peace of mind, but when it comes time to actually do a recovery, it makes your life a million times easier. Speaking from unfortunate experience.
It comes down to how long, like you said, if it's recovering one file or one VM from a snapshot, that could be really quick for you. But you look at impact across more things, and even if it's easy at a scale of 1, can you scale that out to even do it in a rapid succession, or you're at a loss and causing more downtime of your own because of your own operations and getting in your own way. So you have to look at both sides and figure out what's best for you.
Yep, agreed. Let's see a couple others here. And by the way, and we'll talk about this in a second. I meant to put this up on the screen. We'll talk about doing a demo here in a second. A lot of these questions that are being asked here are best answered by doing a demo. When you actually look at the software and how it works, pictures are worth 1,000 words as always. But anyway, that being said, get on to a couple more questions here. A key one, especially for us lately with all of our cloud business, can I replicate out of or into the cloud?
Yeah, go ahead if you want to take that.
And I was going to say, I think I could take that if you're good with that. The simple answer is yes. The Zerto has built-in ability, covers AWS and Azure amongst others, to treat that as a replication target, if you will. So it's an important thing of note there is, and this is kind of what I would call in true Zerto style, the other products that do this same sort of thing out there are much more of a using the cloud as a storage location, if you will. And so when it comes time to do a recovery, you're still pulling all that data down out of the cloud and restoring it locally, which obviously has built in some time issues because you have to download it all. Well, what Zerto has the ability to do is not just replicate up to the cloud, but it has the ability to spin up VMs as if it's another site for you. So when we talk about cloud consumption, obviously the key here is that all these VMs you pay for when they're on, or to use Azure terminology, when they're when they're allocated. What Zerto has the ability to do is replicate all of your VMs or the VMs that you see fit up to the cloud and leave them in a deallocated state so that you're not paying for the VMs when they're up there, but when it comes time to recover from a disaster, you can easily spin those VMs up as well. So it's much, much more than just a storage target. It's an entire solution around spinning things up. And by the way, if that wasn't obvious in what Harry had said earlier, that means changing IPs, that means driver injection, everything that you need to bring a VM online. If there's scripting involved, all of those items are all, it's no different up in the cloud than it is for any other site. And that, by the way, holds true vice versa. So if you have all of your workloads up in the cloud and you need to bring them down out of the cloud, that works in the same exact manner as well. This is one of the reasons why we love Zerto, is it's very agnostic in terms of hardware, in terms of hypervisor, in terms of cloud in general. So I don't know if you have anything else on top of that, Harry, that I missed there?
I could talk for days on it, but that was beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. No, good, very good point. This is very high level, but again, a demo is the best way to see a lot of this stuff.
Absolutely.
One final question here I'll add that we haven't got to, one of the users asked, was if I don't have an entire DR site or a cloud presence, can I, or how can I still use Zerto?
Okay, want me to take that?
And I was going to say I can add a little bit in there, but go ahead and I'll add in.
Yeah, there are many different options. So there's a new feature in the release from last fall called one-to-many, but I've always felt the product had that type of functionality before that. But let me explain. One-to-many means we can protect a single VM to many locations. So even in an example of protecting to the cloud, you might protect cloud up to a day up in the cloud, all your VMs. So if a site failure happens, you can recover them, but maybe you protect them locally as well for 30 days. So if ransomware strikes, you can recover really, really quickly. But there's also what I think of too many as the impact of a single site can replicate to multiple places. You don't have to say this whole site has to go to all of site B. You can say only partial site A can go to site B. Or maybe I want some of site A to go to B and some of A to go to C. You can mix and match anywhere you want. You're just protecting a single VM, and you add on how many VMs you want to protect. And then it doesn't matter where they go or how many times they go there. It just matters which VMs you want to protect.
Yep, I agreed. That's again speaks to the flexibility. That is all of the questions that we have here. I'm sure not only will other questions be answered, but other questions will be asked as a result of a demo. So we definitely, just for a next step, we encourage all of you to take a look at doing a demo. There's an email address on the screen there, info@coretechservices.com. These demos are key to helping you understand the product. So definitely encourage going this route. With Coretech involved, obviously we'll as I mentioned earlier, do a more solutions-oriented approach. So we'll be looking at the workloads individually and walk through how each one of them is appropriately restored, that sort of thing. But please feel free to reach out there. I want to thank all of you folks for joining. Thank you, Harry. Appreciate it. Once again, I think the info here, once again, as we've seen in the past with Zerto, has been valuable, and look forward to talking to all you folks out there in the future.
Great, thanks for having me, and thank you, Todd and team.
Alrighty, thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day, and look forward to doing demos with you in the near future.